The fledged Vulture was once a proud alien salvage ship. Now, she is barely functional, her systems outdated, her reputation tarnished, and her crew reduced to only 2 loyal souls. Captain Ixrit, an insectoid perfectionist obsessed with order and procedures, is desperate to save both his ship and his livelihood. But when his last attempt at hiring experienced alien workers fails, an unexpected application arrives, from a small group of humans. Humans are known across the galaxy for their strange problem-solving, reckless courage, and chaotic teamwork. They break rules, improvise constantly, and seem incapable of doing anything by the book. To Ixrit, they are a risk. But with no other choice, he accepts them. What follows is a clash of cultures, Ixrit's precise, rigid methods versus the humans' messy, unpredictable style. Yet as the crew faces dangerous salvage jobs, fierce competition, and missions everyone else has declared impossible, the humans begin to transform the fledged Vulture. Piece by piece, they rebuild her, not into the ship she once was, but into something far greater. The stakes rise when the galaxy's largest salvage corporation challenges them head-on. Now, Ixrit must decide, cling to the safety of rules, or trust his unruly human crew to push the Vulture beyond all known limits. The wrong choice could cost them their lives, and the ship's last chance at glory. The soft hum of the fledged Vulture's engines was the only sign of life in the nearly empty salvage ship. Captain Ixrit sat in his cramped office, his long, jointed fingers tapping at the edge of a glowing display. One by one, application files floated before his compound eyes, and one by one, he dismissed them with a frustrated click of his mandibles. Rejected. Rejected. Rejected, he muttered. His antenna twitched in irritation. Every candidate was the same, inexperienced laborers looking for easy pay or old salvagers too slow for dangerous work. None had the skills, or the nerve, to handle the jobs he needed done. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Crag, his reptilian second-in-command, filled the doorway, scales gleaming dully under the office lights. Still at it, Captain? His deep voice carried concern. It's been 3 weeks. And it will be 3 more, Ixrit replied without looking up. No one wants salvage work after the Crimson Star disaster. Anything worth retrieving now is too dangerous for standard crews. And those who are qualified, won't touch us because of it. Crag's thick tail thumped against the doorframe. We could try the outer colonies. I already did. Ixrit swiped another file away. 2 responses, both from species that can't survive in our atmosphere mix. For a moment, neither spoke. The truth hung heavy in the room. If they didn't find a crew soon, the fledged Vulture would have to be sold for scrap. Ixrit's screen chimed. A new application had arrived. His antenna perked up, then flattened as he read it. Humans, he said, the word carrying equal parts interest and doubt. Crag stepped closer to peer at the file. All 5 of them. Together. Everything about humans is unusual, Ixrit said. But he didn't delete the application. He began scrolling through their work history. Strong for their size. Stamina above average. Risk takers. The incident reports were alarming. Property damage. Unauthorized modifications. Disregard for safety protocols. But they get results, Crag pointed out, tapping a performance metric. And they're asking for reasonable pay. Ixrit leaned back, considering. The humans' references were glowing, though each mentioned their unique approach to tasks. They'd worked together for years. Always as a group. They might be exactly what we need, Crag said. Different enough to try what others won't. Loyal enough to avoid another Crimson Star. Ixrit hesitated. Memories of the Crimson Star job flashed, half his crew walking out mid-operation, the rest following within days. Only Crag had stayed to limp the Vulture home. Fine, he said at last. Send them an acceptance notice. And prepare quarters they can share. Crag's eyes glinted. Humans prefer company. So the records say, Ygritte replied, already pulling up the ship's orientation templates. I'll need to adjust everything. They won't respond well to standard protocols. Captain, Crag said as he left, this ship is about to get very different. 3 days later, Ygritte stood at the main airlock, antenna twitching with restless energy. He'd laid out orientation packets, protective gear, and a carefully planned tour route. Every detail was ready. You're making my scales itch, Crag rumbled. Relax. A loud metallic bang rang through the hull. Muffled voices followed. Ygritte's compound eyes widened as the manual override engaged, a system that hadn't been touched in years. The airlock cycled open to reveal a broad-shouldered human with weathered features and a patched environment suit. Norman Hawk, the human said cheerfully, removing his helmet. Sorry about the override. Atmosphere readouts looked fine, so, why waste time docking? Ygritte opened his mouth to reply, but 2 more humans squeezed in behind Norman, arguing heatedly. Yuri, the power cell was fine, said a lean, dark-skinned man with patterns shaved into his short hair. Fine like that converter you fixed on Johnson's rig, Terry? Yuri shot back, shorter, stockier, with a shock of red hair. That didn't explode. That was one time. 2 more followed, one tall, copper-skinned, and carrying several containers. The other shaggy-haired, juggling armfuls of personal items. Jacob Anders, said the tall one. Brought snacks. Never start a job without snacks. You do eat, right? Before Ygritte could answer, the shaggy-haired one, Victor, tossed something at Jacob, who caught it without dropping the containers. Told you to pack your own stuff, Jacob said, grinning. Ygritte's mandibles clicked. This was chaos. Where was the order? The formal introductions. Terry had already wandered over to a wall panel. Is that a Mark II atmospheric processor? Discontinued years ago. Terrible efficiency. Unauthorized modifications are, Ygritte began. Done, Terry announced, snapping a panel closed. 20% better cycle timing. Crag's tail thumped. Ygritte couldn't tell if it was amusement or disbelief. Norman corralled the others into a loose line. Maybe we should start with quarters, Captain. Let everyone stow their gear. Yes. Good idea, Ygritte said, relieved. He pointed down the corridor. Victor immediately sprinted ahead. No running in, wait, how do you? Ygritte stopped. They'd already memorized the ship's layout from the schematics in their application. Don't worry, Norman said. They're always like this at first. Give it a day or 2. Ygritte glanced at the noisy group already debating room assignments. Are they always so chaotic? This is them being professional, Norman grinned. You should see game night. 1 week later, Ygritte walked the ship in a daze. In engineering, Terry and Yuri had reorganized everything. The once clean, linear layout was now covered in paper diagrams, sticky notes, and wires. Empty drink cans were stacked in a pyramid. Progress tracker, Terry said without looking up. Each can's a system optimization. Yuri's console was a riot of colors and flashing symbols. Color coding. Red critical, blue life support, green non-essential. Blinking means soon, spinning means diagnostics. In the cargo bay, Jacob had a small garden filtering the air. Shelves overflowed with preserved food. A tiny shrine sat in the corner, for Joe, Jacob said vaguely. Victor's maintenance bay looked like an obstacle course, with tools arranged in strange patterns. Music played constantly. Everything's exactly where it needs to be, he said, catching a tool Norman tossed without looking. Only Norman's station looked neat, but every item had a hidden function. Crag stepped beside Ygritte. Captain, they've increased efficiency 30% in 1 week. Ygritte's antenna drooped. But how can they work in this disorder? Cragg shrugged. Maybe it doesn't have to make sense to work. Through the cargo bay doors, Jacob was tending plants while directing a loading crew. Victor's music echoed faintly. The ship felt alive. Ygritte wasn't sure if that comforted him, or terrified him. The fledged vulture had never been this busy. Every corridor hummed with movement. The humans were constantly at work, but never in a way Ygritte could predict. They didn't follow schedules. They didn't use the standard maintenance logs. Yet somehow, every system he checked was running smoother than it had in years. Today, he found Terry half inside a maintenance shaft, tools laid out in perfect circles on the deck. Outer rings for diagnostics, Terry explained, voice echoing. Middle for common repairs, inner for specialty tools. Cuts down wasted motion. Ygritte's antenna twitched as he noticed tiny devices balanced along the shaft's edge. What are those? Temperature sensors. Set up like dominoes. If something overheats, they fall. Faster than waiting for an alert. Before Ygritte could respond, Yuri's voice crackled over the comm, Terry, engine room 3. That coupling you said was fine. Not fine. It was fine, Terry shouted back, climbing out. Until you adjusted the load balance. You mean improved it? You swapped my screwdriver again, didn't you? It's not swapping, it's upgrading. Terry rolled his eyes, snatching a tool. Watch, whatever's wrong with that coupling, I bet Yuri's already tuned this spanner to fix it. In the cargo bay, Jacob was reorganizing, again. The garden had grown, with hanging plants filtering the air. He directed 3 cargo haulers while stirring a pot on a portable cooker. Food brings people together, Jacob said as if that explained everything. Also, since I set up the plants, air quality's up 15%. The readings agreed. Ygritte wasn't sure whether to be impressed or concerned. Victor's maintenance bay had evolved further. Tools and parts were arranged in flowing patterns. He slid between stations on a rolling chair, music blasting. Every tool is exactly where it needs to be, Victor called. Also, if you arrange equipment based on lunar phases, you never miss maintenance schedules. That makes no logical sense. Hasn't failed yet, Cragg said, appearing beside him. Norman's station was still deceptively tidy, but every item served multiple purposes. Backup power cells hid inside decorative cases. Navigation charts doubled as planning boards. Even his chair had been modified. It's about anticipation, Norman said. Knowing where you'll be needed before you're needed. The call came while Ygritte was inspecting engineering. Cragg's deep voice came over the intercom. Captain, preliminary scans just flagged something in Sector 7. Might be worth a look. When Ygritte arrived on the bridge, Norman was already pulling up schematics. Big derelict. Cargo hauler. Listing badly. Lots of damage. Standard procedure, Ygritte began. Already plotted 3 approach vectors, Norman said. Yuri's prepping grapples. Victor's staged emergency gear. Jacob's reconfigured the cargo bay. Ygritte's mandibles clicked. We haven't, talk and work, Jacob's voice cut in. Also, Terry's got an idea to stabilize the list from portside. Ygritte turned to Cragg, exasperated. They can't just, maybe we should watch, Cragg said, tail swishing. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Terry and Yuri crossed to the derelict, arguing the whole way. If we reverse the polarity, that hasn't worked since Star Trek. Victor deployed a network of beacons to map safe paths inside the wreck. They were built from spare parts, and pieces of the ship's entertainment system. Music helps you work, lights help you see, Victor said simply. Jacob's chaotic cargo bay was somehow catching salvaged items thrown in from ridiculous distances. It's all about flow, he explained, grabbing a crate mid-air. Norman drifted from station to station, always exactly where he was needed. Terry, check the secondary grid. Yuri, Jacob needs a hand with that load. Victor, dim the lights in Sector 5. The humans communicated in bursts of technical jargon mixed with jokes and random comments. It made no sense, and yet they never missed a beat. Halfway through, Terry's stabilization plan hit a snag. No problem, Yuri said. We'll switch to Plan Q. Why Q? Ygritte asked Norman. Because plans A through P didn't cover the secondary hull breach we just found. Ygritte's antenna shot up. There was no secondary breach in the scans. There is now, Terry said cheerfully. Fixed it before it became a problem. A standard crew would have stopped by now, Cragg murmured. Ygritte had to admit, they were right. By normal standards, they should be reviewing procedures, not solving problems on the fly. Then Victor's voice came through, excited. Found the cause of the list. Coolant leak triggered a cascade failure in the gravitational stabilizers. Like the gyroscopic compensator job. Terry said. Yuri, meet me in Section 8. I'll need 20 minutes, Yuri replied. And a miracle. Jacob's already prepping what you need, Norman said. Ygritte started to object, then stopped. He could see the pattern now. It wasn't random at all. They were running multiple plans at once, adjusting priorities on the fly. All they needed was focus. Ship-wide channel, he ordered. When the click came, he spoke clearly. Terry, Yuri, coolant system only. Victor, divert power from beacons to support their repairs. Jacob, brace the cargo bay. Norman, coordinate everything else. The chaos shifted instantly into precision. Tasks aligned. Voices sharpened. Pressure dropped on the coolant system. Rotation slowed. Stabilizers held. An hour later, the derelict was secure. Terry and Yuri had improved its systems beyond their original specs. Victor's lighting plan became a model for future ops. Jacob's cargo bay worked faster than any regulation allowed. Cragg leaned in. Didn't think you had it in you to improvise, Captain. I didn't improvise, Ygritte replied, antenna swaying thoughtfully. I just helped them focus. Which, Norman said with a small smile, is what a leader does. Before Ygritte could respond, Norman added, you might want to check long-range scanners. We've got company. The display lit with a new contact. Cragg's tail flicked. Competitor? Worse, Norman said. The Stellar Horizon. Biggest salvage ship in the sector. Ygritte stared at the sleek silhouette approaching. If they're here, this derelict is worth far more than we thought. The Stellar Horizon cut through the black like a blade, its gleaming hull reflecting starlight. It was twice the size of the fledged Vulture, bristling with the latest salvage tech. Every move was precise, measured, the work of a crew trained to perfection. That's Operator Thex's ship, Cragg said, his voice low. By the book. His crew's got 6 efficiency awards from the Salvage Guild. Terry, already at his console, leaned toward Yuri. Hey, remember that grid adjustment we did last week? Yeah, Yuri replied, eyes narrowing. Gave us about 40% extra overhead. Terry grinned. Exactly. Ygritte glanced between them. Do I even want to know? No, Norman said smoothly. But I've learned that when they get that look, something interesting's about to happen. The horizon's hail came through crystal clear. A holographic figure materialized on the bridge, tall, elegant, with scales shimmering faintly. Captain Ygritte, Thex said in perfect, measured tones. I see you've located our salvage target. I'm sure we can arrange an equitable division, Jacob, without looking up from reorganizing lockers, interrupted. Pretty sure we found it first. Terry, your backup power cell was behind the coffee maker, by the way. Oh good, Terry replied. We'll need that. Thex's posture stiffened. I see you've employed human crew members. Innovative. But the Stellar Horizon's superior capabilities, a cascade of alerts lit up the Vulture's displays. The derelict systems were faltering again. Stabilization was failing. Multiple failures were imminent. Standard procedure, Thex began, is to withdraw and reassess, or, Terry said cheerfully, we could do this. The Vulture's engines shifted to a pitch Ixrit had never heard before. Maneuvering thrusters fired in what looked like random bursts. The ship slid into a position no salvage vessel should be able to reach. What? Ixrit started. Remember that coupling Terry said was fine and I said wasn't fine? Yuri said. Turns out it's perfect for this. Victor's modified grapples snapped onto the derelict's hull with unyielding grip. Structural integrity at 110%, Victor reported. Don't ask how we got over 100. Thex tried again. Your regulations clearly state, Norman, Jacob called, remember that cargo loading trick from Singapore? The one that's against 3 safety protocols. That's the one. The cargo bay roared to life. Crates and equipment moved in a blur, Jacob directing with uncanny precision. What should have taken hours was done in minutes. Impossible, Thex muttered. Those modifications can't be stable. Funny thing, Victor said. If you refurbish a Mark III processor with parts from 6 different species, and 1 piece of questionable Earth tech, it works better than anything on the market. Norman leaned toward Ixrit. Might want to make the claim now, Captain. We've got control of all critical sections. Ixrit straightened. Operator Thex, salvage rights are clear. The fledged Vulture holds primary control. But, he remembered Norman's advice about courtesy. We'd be happy to discuss secondary opportunities. Thex's hologram flickered. In the background, Terry and Yuri were already arguing about whose modifications deserved more credit. This isn't over, Thex managed. The Salvage Guild will hear about your irregular methods. Oh good, Jacob said. Maybe they can tell me why no one else uses ultrasonic resonance for stack stabilization. The hologram vanished. Through the viewport, the stellar horizon began a perfect, precise withdrawal. Well, Cragg said, scales rattling in amusement. That was interesting. Interesting? Terry looked up. Wait until they find out what we did to their long-range scanners while they were talking. Ixrit's antenna shot up. You what? Nothing permanent, Yuri said quickly. They'll figure it out. Eventually. Probably. Definitely, Norman added. Ixrit stared at them, his unorthodox, infuriating, brilliant crew, and felt something strange. Not irritation. Not fear. Pride. News traveled fast in the salvage community. Within a week, Ixrit was fielding calls from clients who'd never considered hiring the Vulture before. The ship's victory over the stellar horizon was becoming a legend. Another request pinged Cragg's console. Merchants Guild, he said. They're interested in our innovative approach to equipment optimization. Ixrit rubbed the base of his antenna. Is that what we're calling it? In engineering, Terry and Yuri were mid-argument, a heavily modified food processor between them. The humans had named it Theus for reasons no one could explain. The resonance manifolds almost aligned, Terry said. Just need to adjust the, don't say frequency modulation, Yuri warned, handing him a tool without looking. Harmonic convergence, then. That's worse. Norman appeared in the doorway. Captain, you should see this. The Salvage Guild's quarterly assessment came in. Ixrit scanned it. 17 regulation citations. How did we get cited for regulations that won't be written until next year? Probably from when we rebuilt the cargo loader's guidance system, Jacob said, carrying a tray of drinks. Apparently adding AI for conversation isn't approved. You gave it opinions? Ixrit asked. Only good ones, Victor said from the bay, where the loader beeped in agreement. "There's more," Norman said. "That big operation in the Castrol Nebula, the one everyone avoids because of the radiation. The Stellar Horizon tried it last week. Failed." Ixrit tilted his head. "How badly?" "They brought back 3 ships," Crag said. Glowing. "Let me guess," Ixrit said. "You have an idea." "Better," Terry said, emerging from a hatch with glitter in his hair. "We have 5. And they all work together. Remember that thing with the atmospheric processor?" Yuri asked. "Turns out, if you reverse, if you say polarity, flow dynamics, then..." Norman cut in. "We think we can handle it. But," he glanced at the others. "We'll need more than our usual modifications." Ixrit looked around the bridge. The jury-rigged systems. The personalized stations. The crew who had turned his ship into something new. "Show me," he said. The next hours blurred. Diagrams. Physics that seemed impossible. Plans sketched on scraps of paper and glowing holograms. Terry and Yuri had been designing upgrades since their first day aboard. Victor proposed sensor modifications that made Ixrit's antenna twitch. Jacob calculated storage for salvage they hadn't even seen. Norman planned drone coordination like an art form. The guild sent a warning: the Castrol Nebula job was officially impossible. Terry grinned. "My favorite kind." Norman, Ixrit said slowly, set a course. The bridge hummed with activity. "Let's show them," Ixrit said, mandibles clicking in a smile, "what impossible really means." The Castrol Nebula filled the forward viewport like a living storm. Vivid bands of red and violet gas swirled in endless motion, streaked with violent flashes of radiation. The sensors picked up interference so heavy it turned half the readouts into static. It was beautiful, and deadly. "Radiation levels are triple safe limits," Crag said grimly. "That's before we even hit the debris field." Terry tapped a flashing panel. "That's why we built triple shielding. Remember the coolant arrays we pulled from that mining rig? Combined with the heat dissipation fins from the Trillium freighter. Plus," Yuri added, "we tuned the shield harmonics to the nebula's radiation frequency bands." Ixrit tilted his head. "You tuned the shields to the radiation?" "Exactly," Terry grinned. "Like noise-canceling headphones. Only for death rays." Victor leaned back from his station, where the maintenance drones hovered in formation. "And if that fails, I've got 15 drones ready to patch the hull faster than the nebula can burn it." Jacob was strapping down the last of the cargo bay. "Food secured, plants are anchored, loaders are calibrated. We're good." Norman stood at the navigation console, calm as ever. "Course plotted. Using the radiation waves themselves for momentum will cut travel time in half." "That's not a thing," Ixrit said. "It will be when we do it," Norman replied. They breached the nebula's outer edge. The shield shimmered, visible for the first time as energy washed over them. The deck vibrated underfoot. Readouts spiked wildly. "Shield load at 80%, Crag reported. "Holding." Terry and Yuri worked side by side, their usual banter replaced by rapid technical calls. "Adjust harmonic dampers to 97.2. Compensating on the secondary grid. Reroute power from the aft stabilizers, no." Terry barked. "From the port array. It'll flow cleaner." Victor's drones zipped along the hull, welding microplates where the radiation scored too deep. "We're still solid," he called. Jacob's voice came over comms. "Cargo bay secure. Loader AI is tracking supply usage. Also, it's complaining about the music." "Tell it to get better taste," Victor replied. The debris field appeared without warning, jagged silhouettes spinning in the haze. The remains of ships from a dozen worlds drifted here, torn apart by storms long past. Massive cargo haulers, shattered freighters, and strange, ancient designs none of them recognized. Radiation spike ahead, Norman warned. We'll have to weave through. Standard procedure says, Cragg began. Standard procedure says we'd never get in, Norman cut in. The Vulture danced between wreckage, her movements impossibly tight for a ship her size. Norman called adjustments a split second before they were needed, and the humans obeyed instantly. Port thrusters, half. Rotate starboard. Boost aft stabilizers now. The Vulture skimmed so close to a drifting hull that its twisted metal scraped harmlessly along the shields. Ixrit gripped the command rail, mandibles tight. It shouldn't be possible. Not with outdated systems, not with jury-rigged controls. And yet, here they were. Contact, Victor said suddenly. Large derelict, dead center of the field. The image resolved, a massive command freighter, bigger than anything they'd salvaged. Its hull was intact, but power signatures flickered weakly inside. Radiation's worse in that sector, Cragg warned. And there's a gravitational shear from the nebula's core storms. Which, Terry said, we can use. Yuri's eyes lit. If we anchor to the debris at the right points, the shear will pull the freighter toward us. That's insane, Cragg said. That's humans, Jacob countered. Norman didn't hesitate. Victor, prep grapples for debris anchors. Terry, Yuri, configure the field projectors. Jacob, ready for immediate intake. On it, came 4 voices at once. Closing on the freighter was like threading a needle while standing in a hurricane. The gravitational pull surged, dragging them toward the wreck. Norman's voice was steady. Hold angle. Wait for the pull. Now. Victor's modified grapples fired, clamping onto spinning debris. The Vulture lurched as the gravitational shear caught the anchored line, swinging the freighter toward them. Projectors holding, Yuri said. Stabilizing the pull. Terry checked his panel. Shields at 115% efficiency. Harmonic tuning's perfect. Jacob's voice came through. Cargo bay ready. Loader's been briefed. Briefed? Ixrit asked. It likes to know the plan, Jacob replied. They docked with the freighter's airlock. Inside, the corridors were eerily silent. Dust floated in the thin air, disturbed by their passage. The lights flickered like tired eyes. Radiation's high, Victor warned, sweeping his scanner. Stay in shielded zones. Teams split up. Terry and Yuri headed for engineering, their voices already rising in an argument about power routing. Victor moved through maintenance sections, drones trailing him like metallic pets. Jacob began sorting anything movable for transfer. Norman coordinated all of it from the Vulture, adjusting positioning in real time to keep them in the least dangerous pockets. Terry here, the comm crackled. Found the main reactor. It's on emergency bypass, but the shielding's shot. Can you stabilize it? Ixrit asked. Not without replacing the core shielding. Which we just happen to have, Yuri cut in. Remember the panels we pulled from that ice hauler? Perfect fit. 2 hours, tops, Terry said. Maybe 1 if Victor's drones help. Already en route, Victor said. An hour later, the freighter hummed with fresh power. Systems that had been dormant for decades flickered back to life. Interior lights glowed steady. Environmental controls cycled up. Radiation down 30% inside, Cragg reported. We've got control of the bridge, Norman said. Navigation's fried, but it's stable. Jacob's voice came over comms. Cargo bay here, you're gonna want to see what we found. Ixrit, Cragg, and Norman stepped through the freighter's cavernous hold. Inside were rows of sealed crates, each marked with the insignia of a long-extinct trading guild. Unregistered tech, Jacob said with a grin. Worth a fortune. Ixrit's antenna twitched. If we can get it out. Oh, we'll get it out, Jacob said. Loaders already making room. As the last crates transferred, the nebula's storms flared. Radiation surged. The gravitational shear shifted. Captain, Norman said sharply, we've got to move. Now. Ixrit didn't hesitate. All stations, prepare for immediate departure. The Vulture pulled free of the freighter, debris anchors releasing in sequence. Norman's navigation adjustments carried them through collapsing pockets of safe space. Terry and Yuri pushed the shields to their limits, riding the radiation waves out. Victor's drones sealed every hull scorch before it could spread. Jacob kept the cargo secure through stomach-lurching maneuvers. When they broke through the nebula's edge, the stars beyond looked impossibly calm. Crag exhaled slowly. Cargo secure. Hull integrity at 99%. Ixrit looked around the bridge. Every human was grinning, flushed with adrenaline. The Vulture herself seemed to hum with pride. We just did the impossible, Norman said quietly. No, Ixrit corrected. We redefined it. The fledged Vulture glided into the docking ring of the Merchants Guild station, hull still scarred from the Castrol Nebula but radiating an undeniable presence. The moment their clamps locked, the comms erupted with requests. Captain Ixrit, this is Guild Command. We have inquiries from 8 major clients. Representatives from 3 planetary governments waiting on the concourse, and the Salvage Guild wants a debrief on your unique operational methods. Crag grinned, a slow, toothy expression. We're suddenly very popular. Ixrit scanned the flood of messages, antenna twitching. It seems, he said slowly, the galaxy has noticed us. Terry leaned back in his chair. Told you the nebula job would get attention. It got us more than attention, Norman said, holding up a datapad. It got us classified as a high-capability salvage platform. Top tier. Yuri whistled low. We just jumped from the bottom of the board to the top 10. The station's guild hall was a glittering cathedral of commerce. Hollow banners floated overhead, projecting contracts, auction bids, and the latest salvage leaderboards. When the Vulture's crew stepped inside, every eye turned. They're looking at us, Jacob murmured, balancing a steaming cup of coffee in one hand. They're looking at the ship, Victor corrected. We just happen to be attached. Ixrit walked at the front, mandibles tight in a mix of pride and discomfort. He was used to being invisible here. Now, even the most decorated captains were glancing his way. At the central table, a guild adjudicator leaned forward. Captain Ixrit, congratulations on your unprecedented recovery from the Castrol Nebula. Thank you, Ixrit replied carefully. And, the adjudicator continued, on outmaneuvering the stellar horizon. Operator Thex has lodged a number of complaints. Terry smirked. I'll bet. The adjudicator's eyes narrowed. Your methods violate several regulations. Victor raised a hand. Only the ones that were slowing us down. Your creative optimizations, the adjudicator's tone dripped with skepticism, have not gone unnoticed. There are calls to review your standing in the guild. Norman spoke up before Ixrit could respond. And yet, every client we've worked for since hiring this crew has received their salvage faster, in better condition, and at a lower cost than projected. A murmur rippled through the hall. The adjudicator's expression tightened. You will submit your operational logs for inspection. Of course, Ixrit said smoothly. You'll find the results compelling. Back aboard the Vulture, the humans were already back to work. Terry and Yuri were in engineering, pulling apart a power coupling, just to see if it could be better. Jacob was in the cargo bay, reorganizing yet again. Victor was tuning the maintenance drones, each now sporting a different paint scheme. Norman was quietly updating their job board, and accepting 3 new contracts. You didn't even ask me, Ixrit said, stepping onto the bridge. Norman looked up. You were busy with the guild. Besides, these are good jobs. Well-paying. Challenging. Ygritte studied him for a moment. You knew this would happen. Norman's expression didn't change. I knew you had the right crew. And the right ship. 2 days later, the next challenge arrived, and it wasn't a contract. The stellar horizon appeared on long-range scanners, closing fast. Guess who? Victor said. Crag's tail thumped. They're hailing. Operator Thexa's hologram appeared, every scale in place, posture perfect. Captain Ygritte. I have reviewed your exploits. I challenge you to a head-to-head salvage. One vessel leaves with the prize. The other leaves empty. The bridge went quiet. What's the target? Ygritte asked. A decommissioned dreadnought, Thex said. Orbiting the gas giant Virelion. The atmosphere is corrosive, the gravity well unstable. And the dreadnought's AI defenses are still partially active. Sounds fun, Terry said. Sounds insane, Yuri countered. Victor grinned. I'm in. Jacob sipped his coffee. When do we start? Thexa's eyes narrowed. When we arrive. The hologram vanished. The Virelion system was a storm in slow motion. The gas giant filled half the sky, its clouds swirling in violent colors. The dreadnought hung in low orbit, massive and scarred, its dark hull occasionally lit by flickers of automated defense fire. Shields up, Crag ordered. Gravity pull is strong. The stellar horizon moved in on a perfect intercept course. They'll follow procedure, Norman said calmly. Which means we'll beat them. Terry's hands flew over controls. Routing extra power to inertial dampers. Yuri checked his readouts. Defense turrets still active in sectors 2, 4, and 9. I can spoof their targeting if Victor feeds me the right signal. Victor cracked his knuckles. On it. Jacob's voice came from the cargo bay. We've got enough space for the main reactor core and 20 auxiliary modules. Loaders ready. The race began. The Vulture dove into the dreadnought's shadow, slipping past the first defense volley. Thexa's ship fired countermeasures, taking the long, safe route. Norman threaded them through debris at speeds that made the hull groan. Terry, now, Norman said. Shield harmonics shifted, the Vulture skimming within meters of a live turret without taking a hit. Yuri's signal spoofing flashed across the boards. Turrets in Sector 4 think we're space dust. Victor's drone surged ahead, cutting a path to the main reactor housing. Jacob, Ygritte said, prepare for immediate transfer. The stellar horizon reached the reactor bay moments after the Vulture. They're locking grapples, Crag warned. Not if I cut them first, Terry muttered. Power surged through the Vulture's grappling system, snapping Thexa's locks before they could fully attach. Reactor detached, Victor reported. Stabilizers holding. Load it, Jacob said, voice steady. Nice and easy. The massive core slid into the Vulture's cargo hold, locking into place with a satisfying thud. They're trying for auxiliary modules, Crag said. Let them, Norman replied. We've got the prize. The Vulture pulled away from the dreadnought, Norman using the gravity well itself to sling them free. Thexa's ship followed seconds later, but the Vulture was already accelerating into open space. On the bridge, the humans exchanged grins. That, Terry said, was fun. That, Ygritte corrected, was decisive. Back at the guild, the result was undeniable. The fledged Vulture was now officially ranked number 1 in active salvage operations. The board displayed it in bold letters, most powerful salvage vessel in the galaxy. Reporters crowded the docking bay. Clients sent offers with no questions asked. Even Thex sent a terse message, respect. Ygritte stood with his crew, looking up at the glowing leaderboard. We've rebuilt the ship, he said. We've rebuilt our name. And now we see what else the galaxy says is impossible, Norman finished. Terry smirked. Because that's our specialty. The crew laughed, the sound mingling with the vulture's steady hum. Ygritte allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. Then, he said, let's get to work.